Hey folks, just a quick note before we start the show. We survived Hurricane Helene and Milton just fine, thankfully. Thank you for letting us take the time off and to prepare and then recover with our families. And with that behind us, Will is working at New York Comic Con this week, so in his place is my lovely wife, Kourtney, who I think really nails examining today's film. So stay tuned for that. Thank you. Kourtney, have you ever been so obsessed with a work of fiction that it altered your sense of reality?
I mean, not my sense of reality. When I get into something, I feel like I really get into it, like I kind of hyperfixate. Mm-hmm. But I do know someone where when we were growing up, we played Dragon Ball Z all the time. Mm-hmm. And we would like role play as the characters, well, like kind of our OCs. And the story was that because she was like a couple years older than me. She was Vegeta's wife and I was their child. And we would just play and like we would see like just stuff in the sky and we'd be like, oh, that's the Saiyans flying by and stuff. Like we were just having fun. And like eventually we, just kind of grew out of it. We stopped being friends. She had a baby kind of early and like we just didn't see each other for a really long time. And then I saw her again when I was in like high school, like I was in like 10th, 11th grade. And she's, she's older than me. She has a child. Mm-hmm. And I remember, I don't know why, but I went to her house like, and we were watching a movie. And then she kind of just turns to me and starts like doing the role play thing that we were doing, like when we were kids. And it like honestly scared me.
Like she just... Like 5 or 7 years had gone by and she was instantly she was like back into the world.
My daughter. And I was like, oh my God. I was really, I kind of felt like, oh, we were playing, right? Like this isn't real. But I got the impression that like, maybe it was real to her and it scared me. And I remember kind of naturally being like, to actually go home now. And I left. So that happened to me one time and it was weird. And it kind of skewed the way that I viewed this movie actually, and we can get into that as it goes, but I took a lot of this literally because I was like, hey, when you have someone who thinks something fiction is real, isn't that scary and weird?
From a recording booth that lives inside your TV, welcome to Debaser, a film podcast. I'm Jared Rusk, and my co-host today is Kourtney Rusk.
Hello.
On this show, of course, we explore both new and familiar movies as we bring you details and discussion about them, all in an effort to debase the films and ourselves. Today's episode, an unnerving look at obsession and gender dysphoria in the film I Saw the TV Glow. Stay tuned.
You gotta kick it off with a killer to grab attention. Then you gotta take it up a notch.
The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us.
Who are you? I'm Shiva, the god of death.
Cells. Interlinked.
It's like people only do things because they get paid. And that's just really sad.
So, Kourtney, thank you.
Sorry.
Stepped over you again. Thank you for joining me today. For listeners, Will is working at New York Comic Con right now. So shout out to Will. I hope he's having fun out there. And if you are in the New York area or already attending Comic Con, say hi. He's working at the Games Workshop booth. I'm fairly confident that is his employer. So today's film is I Saw the TV Glow. It's listed under horror as a genre, but I feel like we can get into if that's apt or not. The film was released in May of this year in limited distribution, but it just went to streaming recently. So like, unless you lived in like a major city, you didn't really have an option to see this film until it went to Max a couple weeks ago. So it is streaming on Max, aka HBO Go, HBO Max.
Hey. Don't dead name. It's Max.
Listen, when it comes to apps, I don't care. It's not. But yes, I know what you're saying. The film stars Justice Smith, who you may know from Detective Pikachu and the Dungeons and Dragons movie that we covered earlier, and also Bridget Lundy Payne. So the premise of I Saw the TV Glow is a teenager is trying to survive life in the suburbs when a classmate introduces him to a mysterious late-night television show. So that premise brings me to an important note I want to stipulate before we get too far into the film. So the main character that Justice Smith plays in this film, I believe the protagonist's name is Owen.
Owen, yeah.
Yeah. We're going to refer to him with he, him pronouns. And that is, but obviously the film is about him having gender dysphoria, but at no point does he refer to himself with she, her, or they, them pronouns. So because they never transition or identify as such, we're just going to use he, him for simplicity's sake. And I mean, honestly, it feels like in the film, it's all about him being in denial anyway. Yeah.
I did have a hard time thinking like how I will refer to Owen's character because it's like, it feels wrong.
Yeah. Because I remember talking about it afterwards and just referring to Owen's character and being he. And it was like, oh, well, it's probably not apt, but that is the only way that, he ever describes himself. And yeah. I mean, I think it's because that he never explicitly states that, that I am trans or that I am, she, he, or they, them pronouns.
They've just been in denial like their whole life.
Right. So we're not, misgendering them basically. And also the director, Jane Schoenbrun.
Schoenbrun.
Oh, okay.
Schoenbrun. Jane. Our gal Jane, who directed this film. Actually, our person, Jane.
Yeah. So the reason I brought this up is because Jane's pronouns are they, them. They are non-binary. I learned that in researching them.
Well, I am problematique.
So the film was written and directed by Jane Schoenbrun, who also wrote and directed the 2021 film We're All Going to the World's Fair. That film is also on Max, by the way, if you want to check it out. Jane is trans femme and non-binary and discovered they were trans into their 30s.
That explains some things in this movie too.
Right. Mm-hmm. Because this movie is a lot about like kind of living with dysphoria for a lot of your life and like almost middle age, like still not coming to terms with it. So it makes a lot of this. This movie feels almost autobiographical, So there's no reported information on the budget for this film. I'm assuming it's somewhat small.
Yeah, but they do get some gets.
As far as casting, you mean? I don't feel like they got paid out, though. You know what I mean? Are you referring to like Fred Durst? I mean, yeah. I mean, spoiler alert: Fred Durst is in the movie, but like they also got like Phoebe Bridges.
Yes,
I don't imagine she commands that much of a salary, though.
But they also got like Pete and Pete. Their cameos in this.
Again, I don't think they commanded much of a salary. I do have a whole paragraph on like all the 90s film stars that show up in this movie.
Well, there's some, I think that's where the budget maybe went.
Yeah. There's also a lot of just like really fascinating special effects happening. Like, and most of them are not, VFX. It's in camera sort of stuff, with like the cool neon stuff and the smoke billowing out of the ice cream truck and all of the pink opaque scenes that are really fascinating.
Oh yeah, because they look like...
But they're done with like a 90s low rent aesthetic.
Right, it looks like a VHS rip.
Well, they did film it in like 35 millimeter and then transferred it to VHS or Betamax like quality so that it had that real look to it, that real aesthetic pull, instead of just like some Instagram reel filter.
This is old.
And it plays that one remix of the Donkey Kong theme song. Exactly, yeah. I'll drop it in here too if anyone doesn't know what I'm talking about. If you haven't been poisoned by Instagram Reels or TikTok like we have.
Pav, here's Donkey Kong.
Pav, you lived in the 90s. Yeah. Nostalgia is a prison. Oh, yeah. So there was no reported budget, but the film did gross $5.3 million during its limited theatrical run.
That's good. That's pretty decent.
It's okay.
I mean, I don't know.
It's not incredible.
You're right.
Yeah.
But I wish I knew their budget.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, this is kind of an art house cinema, so it's okay. This is an A24 film. I don't think we've said that yet. And, A24 takes a lot of swings so that the few hits can pay off for those, you know.
This is a part of a trilogy, apparently, too, Universal trilogy. Yeah, apparently there's one more movie that's going to come out that is like in the same thematic universe
like
as
creepypasta trans identity kind of movie.
Yeah, we're all going to the World's Fair, right? Was the first one?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
I know you.
I have some feelings about
you were
that movie.
A little soft on that one.
I didn't finish it. But I also feel like it takes a lot for me to not enjoy a movie. I'm like almost a movie simpleton where I'm like, I love the films. And I did not even finish that movie because I was very frustrated with the main character. But I think that's the point, but I didn't get there. And then when I found out afterwards, I was like, oh, it's all like a trans allegory. I felt kind of bad.
Well, and the fact that like you didn't get that read from it, but didn't like it, it doesn't make you not an ally.
I was like, wow, this character is really annoying. So I don't know, maybe I will give it another chance one day, but
trans and LGBTQ plus people are not a monolith. You're allowed to not like some of them. In fact, that's more progressive of you to think that.
You're right. I have asked people who I know have seen that movie, and one person did tell me it was like one of the worst movies they've ever seen. And he is gay, so
that makes it okay.
Yeah,
we got to pass. We're not. Just very briefly, I'll say that like I thought that movie was fascinating, but I did have extremely long stretches of like, okay, what is happening? And it's doing like a Paranormal Activity kind of like, here's like security camera. It's like a webcam. We're just watching this like young girl just sleep, and then like creepy things might happen, but it's just very dull and long. Mm-hmm. And I know that's what turns you off. And it is very, off-putting if you're not just being like, no, it's going to pay off. This is going to pay off. That's what I kept saying in my head.
I just no.
And I also I really liked the first 3 Paranormal Activity movies, but they fall off a cliff so fast.
It was a fun ride. It was it was like a time.
Yeah. So let's get to the review scores. So I Saw the TV Glow holds an 84% on Rotten Tomatoes. Okay. That's not bad.
No, that's pretty good.
I don't like to pull audience/popcorn scores or whatever.
Because the audience, is it low?
It's actually like a high 70.
Okay.
From what I recall.
That does track.
Yeah, but I mean, this movie hasn't really hit wide audiences too, is another thing. It's not like one of those films where like it was a major commercial hit. So then there are a lot of people that were like, I actually thought it sucked, Right, because when you said it came out this year, I was like, oh yeah, it is new. Yeah, yeah. And on the, film people that I follow on social media, like people have been talking about it for most of the year. And so like, I was just like, oh yeah, I need to see this movie. And like, I felt like it hit mainstream because there was a social media post from the NASCAR social media, official account that did a reference to this movie, and it was like one of their racers was like sitting in front of a TV with like a pink glow, just like the movie poster for this film.
What? Okay.
And I remember like some people I follow were like, "Oh my god, is the official NASCAR account like referencing I Saw the TV Glow? This is incredible! What a crossover!"
Right? Wow.
So critic Tara Brady praised the film in her review for the Irish Chimes, saying, "The mythology, which becomes increasingly disturbing, is meticulous, but the same material proves a rich seam, a tale of roads not taken, a story that will speak to anyone who experienced an awkward pubescence or the joy renaissance of pop culture enthusiasms." And it's a new French word for me. It means intellectual or physical pleasure.
Ooh, we learned something today.
Yeah. Conversely, film critic and LGBTQ plus cinema historian Ben Turner wrote in his review of the film, Schoenbrun has made a film that's difficult to digest, but it's really not as original as it thinks it is.
Oh, whoa.
A little bit of a burn.
Yeah.
After a decade of nostalgia horror, this is just an avant-garde take on an already established subgenre that feels like mumblecore videodrome.
Goodness gracious. There are definite, like, videodrome, like, references in this movie that are on purpose.
That scene near the end inside the fun center that Owen works at. Yeah.
Wow.
And over on Letterboxd, user BB gave the film 4 stars and wrote, Donnie Darko for they thems.
That's so good.
Pride myself on making my co-host laugh with my Letterboxd review of the film. So, I saw the TV glow.
Mm-hmm. I saw the TV glow.
It kind of... This is not a plot-driven movie. This is a vibes-based movie.
That's true. But there's like, I feel like a lot unsaid in this movie where you have to piece it together and be like, oh, wait, hold on.
So the film sort of opens with Owen as a young child, like young.
Baby. Well, not baby.
Well, yeah.
He's like basically baby.
Yeah, like early grade school. And they're doing like that parachute thing that a lot of kids do in like kindergarten and stuff.
Yeah.
And the parachute just happens to be the trans flag colors. Yeah. Like not an accident, obviously. There's a lot of symbolism in this movie. We get a little bit of a time skip to, I think it's 96, and Owen is with his mom, and they're at the election, and they're at the local high school, which is an election office. Mm-hmm. And Owen runs into another kid that's a few years older than him, who we later find out is Maddie, who becomes a good friend of his. And she is reading a book that's like detailing this TV show that Owen isn't allowed to watch because it comes on so late at night. But he is clearly entranced by the commercials that he sees for it during the day. And the show is called The Pink Opaque. And it's a cross between like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Are You Afraid of the Dark and a little bit of Alex Mack. Yeah. That show where that girl turns into like a puddle of...
the iridescent...
Like the T-1000.
Yes. Yeah, it was very T2. It's Terminator.
Yeah. But yeah, it's kind of like a creepy show about like teenagers trying to like defeat these bad guys that are like really creepy and Lynchian.
Yeah, just like a big bad of the week.
Yeah. The Monster of the Week show, which was really big in the 90s. Yeah. And but Owen isn't allowed to watch a show, but he's like entranced by it, And he sees Maddie hanging out at the school reading like an episode guide for the show and starts asking her about it. And she's kind of standoffish about it, but then he like goes off in the corner and sits, and she realizes like, oh, he's actually like
he's trying.
He doesn't watch the show, but he's clearly interested in it. So she starts like talking with him about it. So she asks why he doesn't watch this show, and he says it comes on too late for me.
Right, because it's a kid's show, but it comes on at 10:30.
Right, and that's after his bedtime. Well, she makes this plan with him to say like, hey, tell your parents you're going to spend the night at a friend's house, but then come over to my house and I'll let you watch it at my house. So we skip to like, he's going to go stay at his mom drops him off at the friend's house, but then he like runs away at the door and goes to Maddie's house and shows up, and Maddie doesn't even like acknowledge him. And she's also got a friend over, Amanda. And they're just talking about like boys and stuff. And, while the TV's on, and then Owen just like sets up his sleeping bag in the corner and like watches the show and is like, just like, obsessed with it, like just like wow, like he's just glued to that TV. Now I will say he doesn't ever show enthusiasm because he's kind of like a zombie about it, but like that's just who Owen is, like Owen doesn't have a lot of joy or enthusiasm or any of that to them, and neither does Maddie, honestly. Go ahead.
Well, I think that is like on purpose, but we'll find out why in a little bit.
Right. I think that's because they're just not, to skip to the end of the theme, but it's like they're not living as their true selves, so they don't feel happy or joyous. Like even though they're watching a TV show that makes them feel like they can express themselves a little differently, like they still only just kind of watch it in like a zombified state, Anyway, it's getting a little beyond the point.
Well, we did skip that Owen is like terrified to ask his dad if he can stay the night at a friend's house. Like,
Yeah.
his mom has to do it for him.
Yeah.
Because he's like,
He has a
so
real
scared of his
standoff
dad.
relationship with his
Yeah.
dad. Yeah. And we don't really see much of that. You know, there's only one scene where they really interact later.
yeah. But it was like also very telling because
Oh, yeah. You can read off of it's inferred.
Yeah.
You know, this movie doesn't do a lot of telling, it just does some showing.
Mhm.
But anyway, yeah, Owen watches the show at Maddie's house, you know, and then she asks them later, like, you know, did you like it? Like, what did you think? You know, and he's like, yeah, it was really interesting. And Maddie just says like how watching that show, I'm paraphrasing, but I remember her saying something about like, it's the only thing that she likes and all this stuff. And then I think at this point she references her dad hitting her, right?
yeah, because she's like, basically they go off to bed and then he's left alone in front of like a fish tank and just sitting there, and she's like, wait, hold on,
Yeah,
let me go
you
back.
hear
And they
her
just kind of
walk
have like a
back.
heart to heart about how like
Yeah.
this TV show has like really unlocked something like in her, like has really shown her like a purpose.
Yeah.
This is not verbatim at all, but
Yeah, yeah. But then, you know, dawn comes, he packs up and heads home and gets away with it, basically. No one finds out, luckily, because there's a lot of tension about, like, if Maddie's dad catches them, like, he'll kill her.
Right.
And, like, and if his parents find out,
and he's
obviously.
like right in the living room too. So it is kind of like, oh my God, if he just
I think it's like a sub-level,
maybe
like
a
thing,
basement
floor. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Or like a separate section of the house or something, you know.
Right, because I was like, he is right in the open. It seems like he's right under the stairs. Okay, so that would make sense if it was a basement. Where we are at, there are not basements, so I don't even think about that usually.
But there's like, I remember when Maddie's friend goes to get picked up, you know, later, she's standing outside smoking.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, okay, hold on. Yeah, you're right. It's not a basement, but it is like a, you know, whatever. We don't have hills where we live.
It doesn't matter. And then there's a bit of a time skip, and then
They're in high school.
Owen is now in high school and is played by Justice Smith instead of the younger kid actor now. And so Owen and Maddie are going to the same high school, and they hang out a little bit, but they're not like super close, you can tell.
Owen even says, like, I don't really talk to Maddie.
yeah.
Like,
But
we just really talk through her giving him tapes
Right,
of the
she
Pink Opaque
records
episodes.
the Pink Opaque on the VHS tapes for him and gives them to him at school. But then one day he walks up to her at the bleachers at school, and they actually kind of have a heart-to-heart. And
It's like online friends meeting, and it's like kind of
Yeah.
weird because it's like, wait, I don't actually really know you that well.
yeah, and they're still a little standoffish,
Yeah.
but they learn a lot about each other in this scene. And Maddie says that like, oh, I don't hang out with Amanda anymore, that girl that was there that night that he came over, because like she told everybody I like tried to touch her tit, you know, and
Yeah.
she's like, I would never do that kind of thing. And I do think it is implied that she's into girls, though.
Oh no, she straight up says it because when they
Yeah.
start talking a little bit, and she's like, you know, I like girls, right?
Yeah, because she keeps implying that like he's interested in her. Like even when he was a kid, she's like, "Don't try to sneak into my bed later, you pervert."
Oh yeah,
But he just straight up tells her, he's like, I haven't ever looked inside of myself. Like I forget what he says. It's really poetic.
basically, it's like, I don't.
But he's like afraid to look inside himself and even figure out what any of that is, and so he's basically just asexual right now.
right.
You know.
I think there is more to this in particular later, but I'll like talk about it once we like get to
Okay.
the end.
Yeah, yeah. But I think you can tell she kind of like, oh, well, A, this guy is not threatening at all to me now.
Right.
And B, like I can identify with that. Like that makes him
Right,
like-
right. Like, oh, you just had like a real like thought. You just
Yeah.
shared something very personal with me.
I think to me a big part of it was like the non-threatening part, and also like she can see him as an ally now, because her being a lesbian in the mid 90s is like obviously not that popular.
Yeah.
You know, that probably makes her a
Right.
fucking pariah, you know, and it's why her friend isn't her friend anymore,
And
probably
like has
too.
turned the school against her.
Yeah, right. And so she sees now in Owen's character, like, okay, this is somebody I can be cool with. Like, they're not going to like turn on me or make fun of me or be antagonistic, basically. And you feel like they get a lot warmer to each
Oh,
other.
I
after that
remember
scene.
what he says. He says like, she's like, what do you like? And he's like, I just like the Pink Opaque.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, that's
And
my thing. I love
but it's
it.
said in like kind of a pathetic way
Oh, right,
where he
right.
doesn't have any other interest or anything.
Right. Basically, they start watching the show together. They start to do the thing where they're having a sleepover. And it's
Yeah,
so
yeah.
much time has passed that his mom is like, oh, you're still friends with that kid? I thought you guys didn't hang out anymore.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, we made up. So they start doing their little secret sleepovers again, and they watch the show every night or every Saturday at 10:30.
Yeah.
And when they first proposed to do this, his bedtime is now 10:15. So that for a high schooler, his dad is so controlling that he doesn't let him stay up until 10:30 to watch the show.
Yeah.
And when he asks, his dad just half turns to him. He's driving and he's like, isn't that show for girls?
Yeah.
So that's like one of the very few interactions we have with the dad. And he's just like shooting down his thing and questioning his masculinity in the same breath.
It's such a loaded statement that like it, and it really hits hard because Owen's already afraid to ask. I think he's laying in his mom's lap in the back of the car.
Yeah. Because his mom is like one of the only things that he has.
Yeah.
Which I also have. We just got to get to.
Well, that's the thing. So him and his mom, I wouldn't even say they're close, but she's like the only person that he is not that uncomfortable around, but still a little standoffish.
Well, she protects him.
Right. But there's a scene where they're at the park and he is like not really being that affectionate while she's trying to be. Mm-hmm. And, but she can just be like, you've kind of been weird for a long time, you know? And,
we find out then that his mom is sick.
Yeah. And she dies of cancer, very shortly after. In fact, the same month that Maddie proposes, hey, let's run away together.
Yeah.
Like, let's get out of here. You know, is it just running away? It's not going into the TV show or anything yet?
No, she says, let's run away.
Okay, yeah. So Maddie proposes to Owen, like, let's get out of this town. Like, let's run away together. Like, we're never going to be able to leave otherwise.
Yeah.
Like, this is our last chance. Like, let's run away together. Come over to my house this night. Say you're staying at your friend's house. Come over here with like a bag and we'll just run away together.
Yeah.
Well, Owen is terrified. Mm-hmm. So he agrees to it with Maddie, but then he goes home and is like so fucking scared. And what he does instead is when the night of, he goes to the friend's house that he's supposedly staying at, knocks on the door, and the mom, the kid's mom comes, and he just like explodes and says like, hey, you have to help me. Like, I don't want to run away. Like, I've been telling my mom I've been staying over here for forever now, but like, you have to tell her everything and like get me in trouble and get me grounded so that I can't like run away. You have to help me. I don't want to run away with her. And he just starts crying, and the mom is so sympathetic, and she's just like, "Oh, honey," and just like I think she embraces him. It's so sad. But yeah, Owen gets in trouble and doesn't end up running away with Maddie. But
Maddie leaves.
Well, what does happen is Maddie disappears. Yeah, all they find is when she goes missing, all they find in her backyard is her TV in flames.
Oh yeah.
Maddie disappears, and Owen's mom dies in the same month, and the Pink Opaque gets canceled.
Right, and the final episode is.
I think the tape just shows up at his doorstep one day. Owen doesn't see the series finale as it airs because he can't go over to Maddie's house and watch it, obviously. But then one day the tape just shows up at his house and he watches it, and it is horribly depressing for a kid's show.
Oh, yeah.
And we haven't even talked about the Pink Opaque, I guess, yet. So I just briefly described it by comparing it to other TV shows. But it's about these two girls that are psychically linked, but they live in different worlds.
Yeah, they went to summer camp together and like basically fought their like first monster together. Yeah. And ever since then they live in the same town.
Oh, I thought they lived in different worlds.
I think they live in the same area, but they just go to different schools or something.
Yeah.
And they never meet.
Yeah.
They just are psychically linked. So anytime something's going on, one of them is telling them how to beat the monster.
Yeah.
So it is kind of funny that well, it's intentional, but that Maddie and Owen they don't really connect. They don't really talk, but they are connected.
Yeah, they are linked in a way.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, the final episode is, there's a big bad called Mr. Melancholy, and he's the guy that basically orchestrates, I guess, the monster of the week every episode.
Right.
And they're trying to defeat him, and he is basically like a guy in like a giant moon mask. He kind of looks like the Mac Tonight guy.
Oh, he's definitely Mac Tonight, Mr. Tasty from Pete and Pete.
I think I read that he's also kind of based on the Man in the Moon thing from that old movie that the Smashing Pumpkins pay reference to, with the Tonight video. But yeah, he captures the two main characters, Tara and I forget the other girl on the show.
Tara and Elizabeth.
No.
Isabel. My bad.
Okay. Well, he captures them, takes their heart out so that they lose their powers, and then buries them alive in a grave.
Yes, and they are just like vomiting this pink fluorescent stuff.
And that's how the show's in.
That's it.
And it's
and when Owen sees this, he just starts screaming and tries to jump into his TV and like is mildly successful until his dad pulls him out.
Yeah.
And you think for a moment, you're like, oh, he's saving him.
Yeah.
But we'll come back to that.
Well, yeah, his dad comes running in a bathrobe and like pulls him out of the TV and throws him in like a bathtub and starts like, hosing him down.
Yeah. Like
it's really intense.
Bringing him back to into the reality they're in.
Yeah.
It was wild.
Awful scene.
It's a very depressing finale to the whole show.
Yeah. But, time goes on. Owen gets a job at like a local movie theater and his boss is Connor O'Malley. I had no idea he was in this movie.
What a surprise.
I was so thrilled.
Mm-hmm.
The very first scene you see him, he's getting a blowjob.
Yeah.
And Owen accidentally walks in on them.
And they're just like razzing him about it later outside while they're smoking and he's just like taking a break.
Yeah. And they're clearly just teasing him because he's uncomfortable about, and sexuality and things.
They're making fun of him. Like, why don't you ever make eye contact with us? Like, why are you so awkward around us? Like,
would you like to get a blowjob from her too?
Yeah, they're being so mean to him.
Yeah.
He stays at that job. Like he's there. He's a lifer.
It's one of those things where, okay, I know the kind of person that Owen is. Like, I've known people like this in my real life. And it's like a person that doesn't know what else to do with themselves and just kind of stays in the first job they ever got.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Like, when I was a young adult, I had worked at Target. And I'm, basically a kid there. And there are other kids who are slightly older. And they're like, yeah, I've worked here for 10 years now. It's like, how have you spent 10 years at Target and you're 26?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I worked
They're still there. I still see them to this day.
That's true. I worked at my first job a little too long, but it was like 3 years. And even then I remember people being like, why are you still there? You're making minimum wage. And I'm like, I don't know.
Did you get
I'm
comfortable?
too afraid to, you get comfortable. You're too afraid to go anywhere else. And that's exactly what I think.
Yeah.
Owen is doing
Owen just kind of settles in.
Yeah. He doesn't know anything else. He's too afraid to explore.
Yeah.
Little on the nose there. But he's too afraid to like really explore and get out there and put himself on the line by trying to go somewhere else because he's afraid and it's uncomfortable, But yeah, he just stays at this job.
The movie theater closes down and he still goes to work he does eventually go to like the fun center that Connor O'Malley owns.
Yeah. So,
but we'll get to that.
Well, while he's working at this movie theater and just living like, I think he's in like his mid 20s now, maybe early 20s. He's at the grocery store one day and Maddie is just there staring at him.
And she just says, do you remember me?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh my God.
Well,
hey.
he's freaked out at first.
No, he's really happy to see her.
No. He doesn't recognize her at first. And he's just like, what the fuck is this person like trying to screw with me? But then he like walks up and he goes, Maddie. And then he just hugs her and he's like, oh my God, where have you been?
You were missing. There was like I thought a whole thing.
Yeah. He's like, you have to go to the police. What is happening? Yeah. But she's just like, I have to talk to you, but like, I got to take you somewhere.
Like safe. Quiet.
No, she says like outside of time and space, I think.
Okay.
And we cut to the Roadhouse from Twin Peaks.
Yeah. They even have a song intermission.
I think it's actually called the same name as something from the Pink Opaque.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Like something diner or something.
Yeah.
But it's like a cool little like indie like bar and music venue. Mm-hmm. And like Phoebe Bridgers? Phoebe Bridgers is playing on stage with a band, and they're playing a song called I Saw the TV Glow. And the soundtrack to this film is very good. I haven't said that yet.
Yeah, Snail Mail is on it. Like, there's just like a lot of indie, like, kind of shoegaze music.
The film has like a soundtrack that I think it has like 16 original songs. It's really great. It's all like shoegaze, like indie rock kind of stuff. A lot of female, vocalists and stuff. Very good soundtrack. But yeah, we get like the Phoebe Bridgers song, and then we get King Woman.
That was intense.
I have never heard of before, but I'm a fan. Like, that was crazy.
Cool.
That was a really cool performance too. She's very electrifying on screen.
Yeah.
Which is so funny because, like, obviously this film is about gender dysphoria. And Owen, like, clearly feels uncomfortable as a man, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And King Woman is, like, such a staunch opposite of that, you know, like, uncomfortable masculinity, you know. Mm-hmm. She's so cool.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Owen and Maddie are at this bar, and she's telling him, like, he's like, where have you been? Like, what happened? Are you going to go to the police? And she's just like, listen, I went inside the TV show, The Pink Opaque. Like, I've been inside that.
Yeah.
And I need you to come back with me. I came back for you, and I need you to come with me.
Yeah.
And she's like, I need to bury you alive.
Like the last episode of Pink Opaque.
She's like, I've already dug the grave. I need you to let me bury you alive so that you can come back with me into it. She's like, we've been living
basically
in a fake world.
We'll
like,
be reborn.
Yeah. And he is clearly, you know.
He, like he did when he was a kid, was like, yeah, okay.
He's going along with it, but he's like.
He's so apprehensive.
Yeah, very apprehensive about it. So they go to the school, and they're on the football field because she's dug the graves at the end of the football field,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like past the goal line. And right when they get to the middle of the football field, he tackles her
Mm-hmm.
and runs away. I don't think I'm looking too much into this. I do think this is intentional. I think it's really funny that he tackles her on a football field to escape.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
Embracing. I think you can look at him allowing himself to be buried as embracing being
like
trans.
Killing
And
Owen.
so he performs maybe the only masculine act he commits in the entire film,
Mm-hmm.
where he tackles somebody on a football field.
Yeah.
And then runs away.
Yeah.
I think that's very intentional. Like that image is very striking for a reason. I really love that. Like, it's awful because he's rejecting it.
He's completely rejecting.
But I appreciated the allegory that it's making.
Yeah.
But yeah, he tackles Maddie and runs off.
So then
he's like, I can't do it.
No.
And he never sees Maddie
Never.
again. She disappears. And, you know, because he's blown her off twice now.
Right.
You know.
She's given him an escape twice, and he's denied it, rejected the call both times.
Both times, yeah. And
so he's like kind of talking to the camera now.
he's addressing the camera, and he's growing up, and I think
He's like, I have a family.
I think like 20 years go by from here.
It's a long time.
Because he's definitely like old.
Yes, he's gray.
Because, man, his lips are busted.
But he even says, like, you know, I've got a family. You never see the family.
No, they never show the family, but he's like, I've become a productive citizen now. He's like, eventually my dad died, and I think he takes the house. He has like a giant flat screen TV that he's like dragging in from the porch while he's talking to the camera about he's got a family now.
And I did see that it was like, it's an LG TV. So their motto is life is good.
Well, it's that kind of like, it's all a facade, you know, essentially, because he clearly doesn't even look that happy even while he's saying it.
No, he seems so sad.
So as he's dragging that TV into this house, he sets it up and he talks about how, like, oh, the Pink Opaque is on streaming now. And I watched it one day and it wasn't how I remember it.
It was a completely different TV show.
Yeah, we see it and it's, you know, we actually see like a kind of a lengthy scene, but yeah, it's like a Power Rangers kind of show.
Yeah, it's literal children.
Yeah, like little kids are fighting this like guy in a fake costume.
Yeah, and the characters on the TV show, Tara and Isabel, they're not even in it at all.
Yeah.
It's just kids basically fighting Mr. Tasty from Pete and Pete.
Yeah. That's exactly what it's
completely
supposed to be,
different. And he's like, it's not what I remember it being. And he was kind of like, wow, I spent so much time like loving the show.
Yeah. And so it makes you think, like, was that a different reality he was living in? Because that's what the premise of the movie is based on, is like, oh, was that his reality? You know, because we start seeing images of him remembering him watching the show with Maddie, and Owen's character is in a dress.
Yeah,
and
looking in like
coming out of the bathroom and like looking kind of uncomfortable, but like seeking acceptance with it, I think. And Maddie like kind of stifles a laugh at first, but then like starts putting makeup on him and they start dancing and stuff.
Because there's a moment where he's like, Maddie and I like didn't really spend a lot of time together. And then you start thinking like, actually, they spent like a lot of time together.
And I think he's just blotting it out.
Denying, because it's like, oh, I like dressed my true self around you, and you like put makeup on me, and we were like you know, we were like very close,
you know,
but he like, Owen denied that part and like kind of blocked it out. So it's like, okay, you're an unreliable narrator at this. Like you realize like, okay, things are like not as Owen sees it.
And is he like subjugating those memories to the TV show? Is that what he thinks is happening? And you find out that the movie theater he worked at closed down, but Conor O'Malley's character went on to operate like
a family fun center, like kind of a Chuck E. Cheese type.
Yeah, exactly. And so he brought him on over there, and we cut to him working there one day, and they're doing like a big birthday party for a little kid. And they're, you know, him and all the employees are in a big line, like bringing in the cake, and they're all chanting like a happy birthday song, like whatever original happy birthday song that store restaurant had to create, because they all have their own. Anyway, Owen is like not super enthusiastic about it, clearly like not feeling great. And then all of a sudden
he's like having breathing problems this whole time too. Like he's just like,
and he has like an asthma problem because he has an inhaler throughout the film, but it's just not working. And in the middle of like the big happy birthday song in this kid's birthday party, Owen just starts flipping out, just screaming and just shouting at the top of his lungs.
Yeah.
And everyone is frozen in place.
Screaming for help.
And not like they're just weirded out by him. They're like, it's like you literally hit pause on tape. You know,
they're just there.
They're just not reacting at all. They're all just completely frozen. And he's looking around like
why
screaming,
can't you
somebody
see
help
me? Like I need help. He's like crying for his mom. He's just like having a breakdown.
Yeah.
He like goes to the bathroom and like
has his
calm
Videodrome
down.
moment.
Yeah.
Where he starts ripping open his chest.
And there's nothing there.
It's just TV static. Yeah. And then he just goes back outside to his work and says, I'm sorry.
He's just like apologizing.
Sorry, I'm on a new drug. I'm sorry. He's apologizing to all the employees.
No one is even acknowledging him either.
No,
he's just like, I'm sorry. And that's
he's like, I'm on a new medication, you know.
Yeah. He's wheezing, but that's it. That's the end.
And that's how the film ends.
Because when I remember when after it ended, I turned to you and I was like, I like this movie, but I don't think I got it. And I don't really feel like I got it until like preparing to do this. Mm-hmm. Because at first I thought that Isabella and Tara were like their OCs. Like my neighbor and we were playing the game and they were like, okay, we're in the show too. And these are our characters. And like my interpretation at first was that this is them playing. And then Maddie comes back and is like, hey, remember when we used to play? That's real. Come join with me. And no one's like, no.
I have, diminished that part of me.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I think that is a way to see it. But I think when I started to do research, I realized like, that's just the beginning of this movie. Yeah. Like we went through the literal plot of this movie, which actually we said it was vibe space. We kind of went through a lot. Like,
yeah.
I realized like, because I wasn't sure about the pink opaque. I wasn't sure about like that part of the movie. And I remember even asking you like, so with the part where the TV show is different, did Mr. Melancholy like really take away that, or like what happened there? Like I was like, I like this movie, but I'm not sure I'm like understanding it.
Yeah. And then it's the kind of movie that's like a little more difficult to digest than most, obviously. Yeah. And it takes repeated viewings, I think, to pick up on some of the stuff.
That's why I was surprised about the critic who was like, this is like an overplayed trope. I'm like, now that I'm seeing it, I'm like, okay, this is like kind of an episode of a TV show that, okay, so real.
Yeah.
The pink opaque is real. I didn't get that at first. The pink opaque is like their real reality. And that is Tara and Isabel. Like that's who they are. And the last episode of the TV show, when they're buried alive,
Mr. Melancholy taking their heart out so that they lose their powers.
They're sent to Earth, or like the timeline that they're in.
Yeah.
And they're basically, Mr. Melancholy is torturing them in their current lives. That's why they're dealt such a bad hand with their abusive dads. And that's why they're dealt such a bad hand. Like they have so little going on for them. The one thing that is a hint to their true realities is the pink opaque show.
Yeah.
That's why I think Owen is drawn to Maddie reading the book.
Yeah.
Because Maddie's even like, hey, do you watch this show? And Owen's like, no. I think that's why Owen was like, I know that. Like, it was familiar because that's Tara.
Yeah.
Because Tara is Owen. Like,
right. They know each other.
Right. They know each other. They are psychically linked to each other. That's why they're always drawn together. Mm-hmm. So all like
But when he rejects her, they get separated, both literally and like metaphysically.
But like all the things that happen that are like distorted, and like psychedelic things are always happening in the backgrounds. That's like their reality that is false that they're living in, falling apart.
Yeah.
And like that's why when Maddie is like, okay, I'm leaving, I'm going, and Owen rejects that. If he did go into the TV, Owen would have become Tara again in their real life.
Right.
But like this whole movie is like an episode of a TV show where someone is stuck in a different reality and basically lives an entire lifetime. And usually in this trope, they come back and it's like, wow, I've like lived 40 years and I'm again like a 14-year-old girl. But that doesn't happen. That's where the horror element is. It's like Owen had so many chances to even just become her true self again, Tara, but rejects the call so many times that the distortion on the screen even says like, there's still time.
Yeah.
And I want to say that at the beginning, it's like there's hope. And that's what Owen's mom is there for. That's why she's so protective and caring of him, because she's like the hope that you can go back to your real reality. But like, it never happens.
Yeah.
So like the hope dies. The TV show becomes a different TV show because there never was a Pinko Pig, and because that's real life.
Well, he's rejecting, all of that. And so his reality further and further removes any evidence of it, I think, is the thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the more he like, by getting a family and a job and still living as a man, that's why when he goes back to watch the show, it's not at all what he remembers. It's not anything of what the reality of the show, The Pinko Pig, is. It's just like, oh no, it's just a dumb kid's show. You forget about it, move on.
Yeah.
That's what his reality that he's living in is trying to tell him.
Yeah.
But all of that is to say, this is all an allegory for being trans.
Yes.
And by saying the sidewalk art that says like there's still time, it both means there's still time to go back to your world and also to
Oh yes, to be your true self.
Right. To
like it's never too late.
Yeah. To realize that you're trans, basically.
By the time the end of the movie comes around, Owen is like old.
Yeah.
Very interesting though. Connor O'Malley and all the other characters, no one has aged.
Yes.
That's another Mr. Melancholy.
Right.
Like,
it's
torturing
not,
him.
I gotta say, I listened to another podcast talk about this movie, and they were like, was that a goof? Why was Owen the only one aging? And I'm like, you're hitting on the
everything is so purposeful.
Why.
Yeah. Everything links.
Yeah.
And another thing I realized was that when Maddie is talking to Owen and is like, I like girls, right? I think they are like in game. They are destined to be together because Owen is Tara. Owen is a girl. That's why there is so much tension between them, because like eventually if Owen had accepted and like went into the Pinko Pig,
well, like once they realize their true identities,
they're like destined to be together.
Maybe they are romantically linked, you're saying?
They could be.
Yeah.
Like, like they aren't, but that's like their fate.
Yeah.
But like,
they aren't as Owen and Maddie, but maybe as Tara and Isabel.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe they are. Yeah.
That's why when Maddie comes back, and in fact, there's a moment in the bar where Owen says Maddie, and Maddie, I'm sorry, they say it's Isabel.
Oh,
yeah. Because
I forgot that happened.
Because they are aware, like, look, this whole reality that you're living in is not real.
Yeah.
But Owen just thinks that it's like, oh, you're crazy.
Yeah.
So there are levels to this movie that everything is like purposeful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting that the most interesting part of this movie is mostly unspoken. Mm-hmm. Like you have to just infer everything and be like, hold on. To talk about this movie isn't to go from the beginning of it to the end. It's like, actually, you have to go back further, where it's like, this is like an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and they are not living in their true reality.
Yeah.
This actually made me understand Twin Peaks season 3 more. It like really clicked for me.
Audrey, that's the one in the world that isn't real. She's in like her coma world. But or the Black Lodge, maybe.
She's stuck in the Black Lodge. So is Cooper. And that's why Dougie and everything is going on. I was like, okay, the world is tearing apart because the people, the true players are not involved in what is actually in that universe.
Right.
And it just clicked for me. I was like, oh man, like sight unseen. This is why the world is crazy, because it's not the true world that they should be in.
Yeah.
I really like this movie. At first, I was kind of unsure about it.
It's one of those movies where, like, the more you think about it, the more you like it. And isn't that so fascinating?
This is like an episode of Sailor Moon, to be honest. If that when in a certain, well, like it could have been, you know, where it's like a magical girl show.
Well, and Sailor Moon was like a 90s. Was it late 80s in Japan and then later came over here?
Like 90s?
No, so it's like a 90s like fun adventure show that's actually deeper than you think.
But that's where the horror element comes from, where it's like, okay, actually, this episode went completely wrong.
Yeah.
And the big bad did win.
Is winning, yeah.
Yeah, like part of me feels like, like hopeful that maybe actually at the end of this, Tara does wake up. Yeah. And like goes back to being
there's still time.
17-year-old girl.
Well, and I think what's fun to link to that is like the writer and director Jane, like I think was like 32 when they were just tripping on mushrooms one day and realized like they were trans.
Oh my God. Could you imagine?
So I feel like that could happen to Owen's character at some point, you know.
But Owen is like, it really comes across as Owen is like 60 years old at this point.
I know. Yeah. Because he's old and busted by the end of the
film. Old
film.
and busted. Yeah.
Yeah. That's really,
You could come out as trans in your 60s.
I mean, yeah, that's what.
But it is sad
that's what Transparent is about too, isn't it?
I don't know.
Well, yeah, I've never seen it because
problematic.
The lead of that show got canceled.
Yeah. Okay. We don't talk about George Sr.
Okay, there's a new movie out right now. Let's switch to this before I end the show. So there's a documentary out right now that I want to talk about. It's called Will and Harper. It stars Will Ferrell and Harper.
Yeah, perfect example.
Harper Steele. Okay.
Harper Steele coming out.
It's about Will Ferrell and Harper Steele.
Yeah.
Who have been best friends for like decades. They worked on so many movies together. Pretty much like every really great like Will Ferrell movie, like Harper Steele had a hand in.
Yeah.
However, Harper Steele has only recently come out as trans. I think it was like 2020.
Very recently.
Where they were like, they kind of knew it. Like she kind of knew it her whole life.
Did, yeah.
But, and just kind of like experimented with it here and there. But then like in deep pandemic was like, I'm coming out.
If I don't do this, I am like going to die.
Yeah.
Just like Owen, who's dying.
Right. But yeah, and Harper also like her late 50s or early 60s, maybe, I think around there. And then the documentary is about Will reconnecting with her after the pandemic, you know, because they haven't seen each other for a few years. And because they live on opposite sides of the country too. And also Harper has become kind of a recluse. I think both as like a defensive mechanism because of it too. But they go on a road trip across America together. And partly because Harper is a little apprehensive about visiting a lot of the same places that she used to when she was a man. And because she used to love driving across the country, visiting like small towns and going into like dive bars and like diners. But expresses that like, you know, since I've transitioned, I don't know if I will be safe to do so. I'm very uncomfortable about doing it. And so, you know, the idea is that like with Will Ferrell being there, both a beloved celebrity and a like, you know, a protective masculine friend, like it'll be safer.
And he does like disarm people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not completely, unfortunately, but
not entirely, but there's a few scenes where you get really nervous and then things go really well. Just to be like, you know, it can be a little triggering if that would upset you.
Yeah.
But I will recommend the film like as a whole. And I think it is more of a how should I put this? It's more of a film for normies. Whereas I Saw the TV Glow is like a little bit of a deep edge and it's, you know, it's an art film.
Right.
It may not be a movie to like show your parents or people who aren't really familiar with like, you know, if they're already not engaged with like art film, I Saw the TV Glow isn't going to change anything.
No.
But Will and Harper might be the kind of movie where you can put it on while you've got family in the room and just be like, oh, this is a cute movie. And then you can come out of it with them being a little more understanding of the trans experience, maybe, you know, a little bit more like, oh yeah, I didn't think that like the world is really that hard, or you'll be suicidal just because people are mean and shit, you know?
Yeah.
It's the kind of thing that like a lot of people really need to like engage with, because
Absolutely.
it feels like it's becoming more and more hostile for the trans community. But anyway, all that is to say, Will and Harper, great movie. I liked it. It's on Netflix. It is a Netflix original. And it is, it's there's more humor in it than sadness, I should say.
Right.
Because, you know, it's two very funny people. I also want to shout out a movie that Harper and Will worked on together that I love, that a lot of people don't ever talk about. The film is Casa de mi Padre. It is a Spanish language film that stars Will Ferrell, who does not speak Spanish. I mean, just barely.
Yeah.
But it is all subtitled in English, if you wish. But it is very funny. It is, the pretense of the movie is that Will Ferrell is like a white guy, you know, living in a like Mexican town, trying to be like a real, true, like Mexican, trying to embrace it, even though everyone's like, what are you fucking doing, you clown? And it's also, there's like a drug cartel like thing in the background, you know, it's so funny. Great movie. I really appreciated it. And when I found out that Harper like wrote for that movie, I was like, oh, I love her. Like, I know she's funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I went into this film like not really knowing who Harper was. And then they go over like her credits. Yeah, they go over like, well, like you may not have heard of Harper, but you know what she did.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh yeah, like I know Harper's work.
Yes.
They worked on SNL too back in the heyday when Will Ferrell was on. And that's how I think that's how they met.
Yeah.
And they became really good friends. So I have some quick trivia for TV Glow, and then we'll wrap up. Canadian dancer and choreographer Emma Portner played 4 different roles in the film.
Whoa.
She was Amanda, Maddie's friend, that they eventually have a falling out. But she also played Marco, the evil clown, Mr. Melancholy, and another one of the villains. However, after her and Maddie's character have a falling out, Maddie says to Owen, I feel like she's a secret agent sent here to make my life miserable. And
she was.
And she's playing a lot of the villains.
Yeah. That is so cool.
Leading into the idea that, like, they are, like you said.
They are.
They're living in, like, their real reality is the Pinko Fake. Yeah.
So Amanda is, like, truly is a secret agent.
Yeah.
Damn.
Isn't that great? Yeah. Multiple 90s stars are included in the film, such as Michael C. Morona and Danny Tamborelli, known as the Nickelodeon series The Adventures of Pete and Pete.
Yeah.
They show for a brief moment Fred Durst, lead vocalist of Limp Bizkit, if that name doesn't somehow ring true to you, is also the father. An interview with Vulture, writer-director Jane Schoenbrun, I'm butchering her name, I'm so sorry, their name, said their inclusion was less about reverence and more about being haunted by familiar faces.
Oh, that's cool.
They reference these faces being ingrained in their subconscious as a child of the 90s and how they found it interesting to bring these faces back to the screen after so much time.
Wow, I wish I read that article.
Yeah, Vulture's got some good stuff on there. Kourtney, thank you for joining me. We'll be back on the next episode with Will, and we might have a guest. I'm trying to get something going.
So you get something going.
But yeah, I wanted to make sure we got a Halloween episode out. I forgot to address that we had to take a break because of the hurricane.
You know, you guys can just keep going for Halloween. I mean, what is November aside from
just
an
like
extended Halloween?
On Debaser, every month is Pride Month. Every month is also Spooky Month.
If it's not Pride Month, it's Spooky Month. Okay, it's one or the other.
It can be both.
One or the other.
Pride. Well, folks, that's been our show. Thank you for listening to Debaser. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to us on your podcast app and follow us on social media by searching for @DebaserPod. My guest today has been Kourtney Rusk.
Hi.
Kourtney, do you have anything to promote?
No, I don't.
Yeah.
Listen to Debaser.
Thank you.
Like and comment. Subscribe. Email them questions. I'm always saying they should do a Q&A episode.
You can send your questions to
debaserpod@gmail.com.
For the Debaser Podcast, I'm Jared. Good night.
Good night.
Debaser is hosted and produced by Will Taylor and Jared Rusk. Want to email the show? Send it to
debaserpod@gmail.com.
Want to help us out? Please leave us a review on your podcast platform of choice, especially Apple Podcasts. If you write a 5-star review of Debaser on Apple Podcasts, I may read your review in a future episode. Thanks for listening, and take care out there.